The best way sometimes isn't the way that you want it to happen.
Exactly. And, everyone wants the cleanest transaction, the best price and whatnots. But just looking at reality of how things are, like, do you want to get the deal done or do you want to let it sit on the market?
Yeah. And I'm sure from the client's perspective, that was a bit of a risk they weren't sure that they wanted to take.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, we got the deal done. It took a little bit more pulling, a little bit more tug, but that's part of real estate.
Welcome to America's Inner Circle, the podcast that dives deep into the stories, strategies, and secrets of the most successful real estate agents in the game. Whether you're an aspiring agent, a seasoned pro, or just love a good success story, you're in the right place. Each episode, we sit down with top agents who share their journey from the ground up, how they overcame challenges, seized opportunities, and made their mark in the competitive world of real estate. Ready to learn from the best? Let's unlock the keys to real estate success together. Here is your peek into the Inner Circle.
Hi, this is Mel Allen, your host of the Inner Circle podcast. And this is a podcast where we're diving deep into the stories of some of the most successful real estate agents in the country. If you want to learn how to establish yourself as a top agent, you're in the right spot. And today we're honored to have Justin Wong from the East Bay area of California. Justin, welcome.
Hey, good to be here. I'm excited.
Well, let's start, by kind of looking at some of your background in this industry. So kind of how long have you been doing this and what are some of the areas that you've kind of come to specialize in along the way?
Yeah, sure. So I can't believe it, but I've been doing commercial real estate. I headed straight into it, commercial real estate versus residential. I've been doing it for about 9, going on 10 years. I guess my epiphany into commercial real estate was I was always, in sales, business development. Right around 27, 28, I had my realization saying, like, for the job that I do, which was not real estate, is this something that you want to do in the long term? And I looked in the mirror and said, no. I've always had not a passion, but it grew to a passion. But I had an interest in real estate just because through my family, my father specifically, he started with house flips, duplexes, fourplexes, multifamilies and stuff. And, I've always been in that background of, especially as a kid, using real estate as a vehicle, not only get wealth in that sense, but also do things outside of the rat race from the 9 to 5.
Wow.
My father was, he worked in the U.S. Postal Service, and that was a great career for him, but he wanted to do other things, obviously. And so I took that in mind and I dove into real estate. I was actually working in downtown LA prior, moved back to the Bay Area, got my license and got seated up with a brokerage that I trusted. And then I won't say the rest is history, but there's so much more to that journey in that sense. But that's how I got plugged into real estate.
That's definitely really interesting. I mean, coming from a childhood where flipping houses was kind of a normal for you. So you saw a side of real estate that a lot of people are just kind of like, maybe I could get into that. And you're like, no, that's where I started. So
it was always on the back of my mind. Like I went to college, UC Irvine. I did business econ and, but I did not have the intent of going into real estate. I was always around it. And I remember between me and my sisters, like on a Sunday, we'd go to like a random property and pull weeds, right?
The glamorous life of real estate back then.
Right. And I'm like, Dad, why are we doing this? It's not even our property. He's like, yeah, I know. It's our investment,
Right. No, so it's a different way of thinking about property that, a lot of people are not familiar with. So now you mentioned that you have a brokerage that you work for, a team around you, or are you on your own now?
Team, it's a very small team, and I'm always going to be Rookie of the Year because it's a very older, tenured commercial real estate team. It's a small team. I think it's only about 3-4 of us now in San Francisco with SVN, commercial real estate, and I came in as the youngest and I've remained the youngest, and that's okay. I mean, I know commercial real estate can be, from what people have told me, like an old boys club, and I get that. And thankfully, throughout my years, I've paid my dues and gotten better with every transaction, and I can talk about my deals with a lot more confidence than I did before.
Well, that's good. Speaking of talking about your deals and where you kind of started out, well, what was like the first deal that you put together and kind of how did that launch you?
I mean, the first deal was small. It was a commercial lease deal, retail. Mom and pop that wanted like a 2,000 square foot retail space, and that was fun in that sense. And I'd say in regards to the sales side, I went into duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes, and then I've done up to 35 units for multifamily.
Oh, wow.
But what I've learned with every sort of product type is you have a different set of buyers and sellers, and a different hurdle of challenges. Some clients aren't as sophisticated, more mom and pop, and the other ones are more tenured, and they're very they're savvy business people, and I understand that. So it's just you learn little things along the way, and that's okay. And I'd say that's I guess within my niche, I like multifamily. Going back to my father and tenants and units, that's something that I've always kind of held on and feel good about. But in that sense, a lot of times you'll have multifamily people that get tired of managing these tenants. It's a lot more strenuous, so they look to sell their multifamily and look into something that's a little bit low maintenance, something out of states, retail with triple net. And I could talk about that later on, but something that could get a high return with less headache. So I kind of go back and forth between retail and multifamily, and that's kind of how it came to be over the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, it sounds like in your line of work, you're having a lot of moments where you're teaching people, but you also have a lot of moments where you're learning, about the clients and how their needs probably shift over the years too.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say especially in the Bay Area, there's clients that are very successful, and they got into real estate at the right time. Like, it's crazy. Like, in the 60s, the 70s, I had this one client that used to work for the city of Oakland, so he was very cognizant of permitting and zoning, and he found distressed properties, and he built his quote unquote real estate empire. But now he's getting up there in age, and he can't manage everything, so he's learning to trying to divest, and I won't say right off into the sunset, but let his cash kind of not work as hard for his cash. Let's just say that.
Right. Yeah, he wants his cash to start working for him more now.
Yeah, and he's a little bit more old school where he really should outsource it to more property management in that sense. But since it's in their area, they choose to be a little bit more involved, which is, I don't know how they do it, but each to them. Right.
Yeah. It definitely takes a lot to be involved in properties that you own in an area. I mean, I've only been involved in that slightly, but everybody that I know who does it, it seems like it's a full-time job on top of a full-time job. So.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
What were some of the moments that made you realize that this really was the right path for you? Like, obviously selling it, making a deal is good. Getting that check is great. But what was it that you were like, I really want to keep doing this?
I'd say it was a multifamily deal. It was a 10 units in the Bay Area, but just underwriting it itself, it was one of those deals where what we call it like a cover land play, meaning that you could get income in the present, you get cash flow, but it was on a huge lot. And so a cover land play is you can take the cash in the present with its current use, but down the road, right now it's not a great time for developments, but down the road, should it be more favorable to develop and with construction costs and whatnot, you could tear it down and you can make it's zoned to make more units. You could do a mixed use, you can do a lot more things with a higher return. It wasn't just a straightforward, hey, sell this multifamily and it's done. My marketing was I had to paint a picture saying, you can do it right now, but there's so much more you can do. Here's the zoning. I had to be very sharp with it. I had to check with the city, everything else that comes with it. And the good part about that transaction was I was tested mightily by the buyers that came. They had a slew of questions and just having your eggs lined up. It was a tougher property. The reason why I say it was a cover land play was it wasn't in the best part of town,
right?
But it had potential. Sure, you're getting cash flow with these said tenants. It's a big lot. Down the road, you can do said intended use. And so to market it and paint that picture and work with these buyers, it took a long, like I said, it's not the best part of town. So it took a much longer expected period to get the deal done. But when I was done with that deal, I felt so much more. I learned so much more, and I felt so much more accomplished to get the whole spectrum of commercial real estate, of underwriting it, both in the present and in the long term.
Yeah, there's a value proposition there that you were able to see, able to get the client to understand, and kind of like all of the value of that just to yourself, and kind of going through that process, it sounds like was really valuable and really pivotal for you.
Right. And, and no disrespect or no, whatever to those that do residential, but underwriting that specific deal really challenged me about both the present and the long term. And just, it was pretty cool in that sense.
Yeah. Cause I mean, on paper, having two properties, that's like, you're going to make X amount of dollars off this, but this one is built out. There's nothing else that can happen there other than knock down and rebuild. But this one, you've got options, and options can be really valuable. I mean, it can be challenging and can be scary, I think, sometimes to people, but, helping people see the value in those options sounds like it was the right thing for you.
Right. And I'd say recently, and in the last couple of years, because the market hasn't been good for commercial real estate, I'm getting better or upping my game too, because to make some of these commercial deals, it's not everyone always has cash on hand right now in terms of cash leverage, and finding the right buyer in the sense where cash is hard to come by, especially for distressed properties. Looking into different value propositions to get the deal done, like seller financing. It's a lot harder to find the right buyer in a tougher market. Sure, there's opportunity out there in a tougher market for commercial real estate, but to hone it down and actually close the deal, that's another factor that I am heavily feeling the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that sounds like it's a pretty challenging time. I mean, have you had, some of those most particular challenges in these most recent years, or is there one that you can think of that maybe, looked like it was going to be a failure at first, but you overcame that, you actually turned it into a successful move?
Yeah, going back to, I guess, these cover land plays, but there was this one distressed property. It was pretty rough now that I think about it. I did it last year where you couldn't get typical financing. Like
Right.
I won't say like it was horrible, but there were a lot of things that, from a traditional loan perspective, you're not going to get it approved. So what they did was the buyer, put some cash in, also did some a hard money loan, and also got the seller to finance 40% of the deal as well, and pieced it together. And the hardest part for the seller was the seller had never done seller financing. It was something that they weren't accustomed to. It's something where you put it on the market, you cash out easily in that sense. And, having that conversation saying, if you really want to sell this property, truly you want to sell this property at this point in the market, we're going to have to get a little bit more creative to close the deal.
Right. Yeah. The best way sometimes isn't the way that you want it to happen.
Exactly. And, everyone wants the best, the cleanest transaction, the best price and whatnots. But just looking at reality of how things are, like, do you want to get the deal done, or do you want to let it sit on the market?
Yeah. And I'm sure from the client's perspective, that was a bit of a risk, that they weren't sure that they wanted to take.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, we got the deal done. It took a little bit more pulling, a little bit more tug, but that's part of real estate.
Yeah. Speaking of risks and speaking of, hey, that's real estate. What are some risks that maybe that you've taken, times that you've kind of gone out of your comfort zone to make some of these happen, and where it, hopefully paid off for you?
I'd say the biggest thing, I'll be straight up, just to make sure that, amidst these conversations and these offers that I get, is to really stick to my guns on, what is ethical. There are a lot of things where you get some very interesting deals of how they write it, credit back here, we're going to do this particular loan, write the deal like this, but then the actual price is going to be XYZ, but you're going to get a higher selling price, right? I think the biggest thing is like the barrier to entry for this industry is, for all intents and purposes, it's not that hard in that sense. Mm-hmm. So you do get a slew of, I have a handful of agents that I love working with, and then there's some agents that aren't as favorable in that sense. And I would say, in regards to doing the right thing, and obviously not getting to any legality trouble and the best interest of your client, you got to be very cognizant of some of these conversations that come your way.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure that you could be in sticky situation depending somehow on the, the creative financing. I mean, I'm familiar with that myself on one of the houses that I purchased. I asked actually the seller to ask for a higher price in negotiations, and then to kick some of that back to us just because it put us into a better financing zone. And
Right.
and it worked out, but they were kind of like, I feel like I'm breaking some law, and I'm like, no, it's
Yeah, and having that conversation too. Some things I
it's
get it, it
uncomfortable.
makes
Yeah,
sense. Other things I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
and I don't
Although
have
I
an
want to be
answer
attached to
to it.
this.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, and especially for some of these bigger deals, yeah, no, it would amplify. It's not just a single family house; it's like an apartment complex, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think, talking to you in this brief period of time, I can tell that you probably don't have a poker face. Would you say that, kind of letting your emotions show to your clients is something that sets you apart from others, that, or what is it that sets you apart from others who are in your industry?
Well, I'm a Cancer, meaning that I have my heart on my sleeve.
Hmm.
Be very emotional. My sisters and my mom has told me that, I guess. But I'd say I guess my tenacity, my energy is something that's always my charisma, I suppose, is something that I often get in regards to feedback. But the biggest thing about commercial real estate, at least from my own internal conflicts, is I have a younger face too. Yeah, I don't know. It's because I'm Asian. I look a bit younger, but especially when you start in commercial real estate, it's an older crowd, and you have older clients, and you have older agents. So for myself, I might not have as it's 9 years now, but first starting off, I might not have as much experience in transactions, but for every listing appointment, for every showing, I better make sure that I know my stuff. I got to be that much sharper. And so maybe that's that energy, that charisma that I put out there of lighting it all in is the reason why I'm able to win my clients. So
Nice. Hey, I don't have any commercial holdings or anything right now, but if I was interested in that area, I'd certainly be calling you.
yeah, for sure. Appreciate it.
So, obviously not everything's on the up and up, and we've all seen ebbs and flows when you're, in charge of, making sure that you get paid. How do you persevere through those times when there are, some slower market periods?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you got to save for rainy days. You're not always going to be having killer years, especially the last couple of years. That's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing too is, as much as I like sales, commercial leasing is another vehicle for commercial real estate that keeps the lights open in that sense. I mentioned one of my first deals was like a 2,000 square foot retail lease. I mean, the commission wasn't that crazy, but oftentimes, being within my network, I'm the commercial guy, and I appreciate everyone's consideration. I do get leads, but more times than not, they're not to sell a 10 unit apartment or this big listing. Oftentimes, it's small businesses that are looking to open a restaurant or a retail space, and I'll qualify them as best as I can. I can given my experience, that I'll let them know what I can and can't do. But that's another thing that I'm certainly able to do, especially during harder times.
Yeah.
And I will say this: I've done a couple recently. I've done a couple of office deals because, as you know, downtown office, especially in San Francisco, isn't too favorable right now. But I will say that they do pay tenant rep agents a lot more to bring a good, reputable tenant into said office space.
Oh, there you go.
So, they're like, back in my day, it was like $5 a square foot, but now we're only asking for like $3 a square foot. And, if you have a good tenant, you kind of hold the cards and they kind of roll out the red carpet for you if you have a good tenant.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's good to maintain those relationships with some of those clients over the years for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons, obviously.
Yeah.
I think you've already touched on this a little bit, saying, kind of when you get into some of these arrangements with people who are a little unscrupulous, like how do you make sure that you are giving clients a good experience and also bringing your values, your principles in to guide your daily work?
The biggest thing is hearing their needs. What's their MO? Is it a short sale? Is this a long-term ordeal? Are you going to use the real estate that as an owner user? Just understanding those dynamics, and based off of my experience, I'll try to guide them as best as I can. I think the biggest thing is and what I found that you get more respect from your clients is actually disagreeing with them,
Hmm.
having those harder conversations, saying, "Well, did you think about this factor, or what about this, or what about this scenario?" Yeah. So the conversations that aren't as smooth, I can't always be a yes man. Oftentimes, when they circle back, they're like, you know what, you had a good point. I didn't think about that. Thank you. So
Yeah, yeah. Disagreeing doesn't always mean arguing, and I think that sometimes people have a hard time, kind of thinking like, well, geez, if I disagree with them, it's gonna sink this deal. And I've always found that people, if you tell them about some of these concerns, some of these realities, in the way that they're thinking, that they may not have perceived, that's why you're there. I mean, you're there to help them understand benefits or risks that they may not see on their own. That's a big part of, I think, your job.
commercial real estate right now, because it's a tougher market, when I do my broker opinion of value on these properties, I try to be as real as I can with them, saying, you maybe their expectation is the price is here.
Hmm.
I think it's here. Why? Right.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. You
Right.
should be able to educate them on it. You should have the knowledge to not just be like, no, it's here. And that wouldn't be a very that discussion wouldn't lead anywhere, I would think.
There are other people too that will quote unquote buy the listing, saying, yeah, I think it's such a high price. Let me get the listing, and then it'll sit on the market, and then they'll ask for a price reduction and be like, oh, it just didn't work out, and you end up selling the actual property at the price that was kind of hits me sometimes. But I'm like, yeah, that's how I evaluated the property, and it sold at that number anyways. But you wasted a ton of time and effort.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's going back to like my strategy. I try to be as pragmatic, as real as I can, and tell my side of the story of how I view the property. But other people have different strategies. So whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes what you want to do and what you can do, you can't always bridge those gaps. But doing what you can, actually trying to be real, trying to be forthcoming with all these things, it can take a little bit of time. How do you make sure that you're, taking that time to educate your clients, but balancing the work life, combination, and making sure that you also have time to actually enjoy your life while you're in the middle of some of those demands?
I'd say the good thing about pickup basketball is I've been doing it for so long, and I think for me, health, just being active, is a big part of my life. It's actually therapeutic in that sense. I play ball every Wednesday night from 7:30 to 10, and then every Saturday morning from 10 to 12:30. That's no buts, no ifs, ands. Like, that's something that I'm committed to. And having said that, like, I'm super competitive, and whether it's real estate or try to get the game winning point, it's something that that kind of resonates anyways. And having said that, like, it's good to be in good health. I do things such as meditation, just trying to wake up early, going to the gym, having my moments as well. Because once the day fully starts, I mean, it can get a little, especially in real estate, it can be a little chaotic. I mean, you have to go from one part of the Bay Area to the next, and that's okay. That comes with the business.
Yeah, well, and I think some of these things that people have a hard time doing is looking at things with yourself as, that's a meeting, right? And that meeting can be just as important as a meeting that you're having with a client. So your pickup game, while somebody who doesn't enjoy basketball may not understand how important that is to you, you still know that it is. And I think that that's the important thing that a lot of people need to realize is that, yeah, you have those business things you have to do. You have to set up time to, file all of the things you have to file for clients. Super important. But meditating, waking up early, playing pickup basketball. I mean, do you agree those are just kind of, in a way, as important, as the things you're doing with clients?
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about mental health, your own inner peace. You're only as if you don't have everything situated internally, you can't be doing what's best for your clients. If you're a little bit more rattled in that sense, and it doesn't have to be basketball. If people like hiking or other things that keep them going, that's totally fine.
Yeah. Personally, for me, it's a walk. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Right.
even though it's getting cold here, I'm still bundling up and going out and taking walks a couple of times a day, because to me, that's, getting my mind reset, getting, into a good place mentally where I can then prepared to do things for other people is important to them as it is to me, right? So
Yeah, and that's the funny thing too. When I do my Wednesday run for basketball, it's probably the most intense games because this is like midweek for all these guys. They're doing their grind, and everyone looks forward to ball to kind of release all that tension in that sense.
Well, speaking of tension and the things that give you that, what are some of the biggest changes? Because changes can definitely be, they can be relieving on the backside, but they can be kind of tense. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the real estate industry as you've been in this career now for 9 years?
I'd say just shifting between buyers and sellers market. I'd say that's in previous years when interest rates were more favorable. Times were good. You can even for retail and office, you can get really good rents. Like it was more on the landlord side, and now it's shifting otherwise, and hopefully it gets better in 2025. But especially for office and retail, like office, I think it's going to take several years for San Francisco and Oakland, for that matter, to get the workforce back to what it was, pre-COVID. But it's just adjusting that shift and having these conversations with your clients. They have these expectations, whether it's multifamily, retail, or office, that the price is here. But because of all these mitigating factors, it's having those hard conversations, and especially for loan maturity as well for some of these higher price commercial properties. When the loans due, what's the plan, right?
Right.
And the evaluation of the property was much higher before, especially in downtown San Francisco. It might be significantly lower. And what is the game plan, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
Those are the conversations we're having now.
Yeah. Well, how do you kind of stay ahead of those kind of trends, so that you can make sure that your clients are seeing this when you're seeing, hey, the market's heading this direction. Let's put together a plan for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, going back to it, I may be younger, but I had to have my eggs lined up. So, I mean, I often do a ton of research about some of the trends that are going on throughout commercial real estate. In regards to my off time, I network. I'm very much involved in a nonprofit called ARIA, which is Asian Real Estate Association of America. I'm also involved in CCIM, which is another commercial real estate intensive organization. But, going to different events, stay at the market, learning about different trends, speaking to my peers, you get a better sense, not only on a macro level, but even on a micro level of what's going on in the Bay Area.
So, from your own experience recently, are there any trends that you're seeing that are kind of starting out that people should be aware of, should be paying attention to, right now as the market is possibly going through another shift?
Yeah, I think multifamily is pretty stable. There's always going to be a need for housing. I think that, at least on the local level, in terms of public perception and feeling safe, I think that policy is definitely heading in the right direction from what it was 4 years ago. So hopefully that should improve multifamily in that sense. I think that retail is always, you're not going to have your big Sears floor space. Like, retail is getting better, but it's shifting in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think for retail plazas, every 10, 15 years, they have to adapt to the consumer. What is the new consumer? What do they want? What are the food trends? How do people shop? Obviously, Amazon and e-commerce is a big factor now. So they have to adjust their playing field in that sense. But it's good that, post-COVID, that people are going out there and, spending money and doing what we were doing before the pandemic happened. In
my area, nobody ever expected food trucks would be as, common or as good, as they are. And, that left a lot of brick and mortars unhappy about it until some of the brick and mortars decided, well, you know what, we can actually have a food truck and go send it to these events too. And then, here's our brick and mortar name in front of new audiences and, in new environments. And I think it's one of those, kinds of things that nobody saw that trend coming. And all of a sudden it's now relied on by a number of people.
I mean, delivery. Oh my God.
Right. Yeah.
When people take out delivery, like it's it's nutty, you know.
Yeah, I mean, people definitely are of the mind sometimes, and I think that that's probably something with people who are newer coming up, that they can just pick up the phone or they can go to their app and they can order something. And while to some degree, sure, that's true, but you're definitely a kind of a hands-on business. I would think, where you're really, have you seen any kind of trends in your industry like that people are kind of thinking is a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say most restaurants right now, and mind you, the business model, some of them work, uh, but that traditional sit down restaurants with the full kitchen and the floor space in that sense. While there is a need in terms of new businesses, that everyone's pushing for what we call a QSR, which is a quick service restaurant, like a Chipotle, something more on the go, because you don't need as much square footage. You can get a higher count, especially during lunch and dinner time, and you can still have a really good product. Like, it's, as you've seen with Chipotle, like, it's not cheap anymore. Like, you'd still get a pretty high price point in that sense. And the setup isn't as crazy versus a full on sit down restaurant where you need a whole team for that business model, right?
Right. Yeah. Very different models. Things have definitely changed in that. Yeah. And I know what you're saying. I mean, we could go on about that, but how about let's
Yeah.
shift gears. And let's talk about some of the people who are listening to this. I mean, obviously, as somebody who's been in this for a while, and you've been doing this, what are some things that you've learned along the way that you wish, some advice maybe that somebody you wish had given you when you were getting started, that you can pass on now to other folks?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things to keep in mind, but I think the biggest thing is going back to mental health. I mean, your first couple of years, you're gonna get your butt kicked. There's gonna be more L's, more losses than anything. I think that's a lot of times, especially for commercial real estate. I mean, it's a much longer sales cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So, going back to mentally just grinding on these deals, being persistent, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and continuing to get better, because I will say this: with every transaction I have internally, I have a lot more confidence, and it resonates for the next conversation that I have with prospective clients, whether a hot lead or what have you. But the more experience you have, the better suited you are, and people can feel that, because it's not something theoretically speaking of what you learned in the books about real estate, but you've been in the grind, you've done these transactions, you know how hard it is, and that will make you so much better in the long run. But for the first couple of years, like I'd say getting your hands immersed in different deals and learning in that sense, and just getting your butt kicked early on will make you better in the long haul.
Yeah, well, I think I recall, this is something that I've not just heard basketball players say, but I've heard other people in business say, is that you need to take away a lesson from the L's, right? You need to lose up, and you need to lose in so many different ways that there's no other choice than for you to succeed. And,
yeah. And even going back to basketball, I mean, there's such a big social aspect for basketball. It's not, you play and you go home or whatever. There's a big, on the sidelines, these conversations, and you network, and you find other ways. How do you get better? You often talk to your not your colleagues, but your teammates, and
right.
Slowly you pay your dues, and hopefully you become a bit better player. That's the plan.
And I think that's, one of the reasons why, working with other people, having networks, having people who are, in that kind of mentor relationship can be really good, because you'll have somebody who on the sidelines is going to say, hey, this is a pretty common mistake that I'm seeing you make, and helping that person to navigate their way through that. What are some of the common mistakes that you see people who are kind of new to this do? What are some of those?
Well, your analogy to basketball to commercial real estate is perfect. It's being coachable, because not everyone wants to hear you keep missing the shots, or you keep, not getting the listing. Like, here's why. Not everyone wants to hear that. I think being humble and taking a step back and being open-minded in that sense. And, sometimes there are things where you might be like, you're doing this for a reason, or we can agree to disagree, but at least having an open perspective to hear people out and, make your assessment from there. That's a life lesson, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think being coachable is one of those things in so many ways in life. If I was to go rock climbing today, sure, I did it when I was in my 20s, but I would definitely hire somebody to say, no, this is how you want to do that. I don't want
Yeah.
to be 100 feet up making a bad decision like that. So, yeah.
And things that I did before in my 20s for basketball, I'm not as nimble to do it in my late 30s now. So
Exactly. Yeah.
you have to evolve,
You definitely do. Yeah. And being coachable, I think, is going to work in your favor, and not just real estate, but kind of in any area of your life.
That's right.
Where is a resource? How can people locate a resource that whether it's a book, a website, an app that you're using that's really helped you in your business that you could recommend other people kind of investigate, look into?
I mean, in terms of just being savvy with commercial real estate, especially in the Bay Area trends, I mean, I use SF Business Times, I use CoStar, I use Crexi. Those are platforms specifically to commercial real estate. Not only, at least for Crexi and CoStar, not only do they have listings, but they have general trends that go on within the Bay Area. I always try to stay on top of news in that sense. I mean, there's plenty of sales books in that sense. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I mean, you've named a couple of things that I think are helpful. So, if somebody is looking into your area, I think that would be a great place for them to start. And, I find sometimes one tool leads to another sometimes. So,
yeah. And, in terms of commercial real estate, in terms of education specifically, CCIM, which is Certified Commercial Investment Member, that's an organization that does offer intensive investment classes where you'll do the exercise of underwriting a deal. You'll do the aspect of the marketing, in terms of demographics for a retail property, a lot of macro level stuff. If you really want to invest and put the time into it, I'd say that would be probably the best resource if you really want to hone down on commercial real estate.
Nice. Oh, I appreciate the recommendation there. If somebody is kind of doing well, they've got these things down, they've done the investment of time, they've researched these things, they know what they're doing, but they're not in a position to scale. What's something that they could then kind of do as a first step to start scaling up their career in the industry?
Definitely your farm, meaning that wherever you want to specialize, whether it's in in your neighborhood or your parents' neighborhood or somewhere that you're comfortable with, where you want to target. Just getting to know all the players, and going back to what's your product type? Was it multifamily, retail, or a little bit of everything? Like starting off, it's good to be a little bit more honed down, because especially when you start off, like you're so scatterbrained at times that keep it simple, and then build upon identifying who are the players there, and obviously to market yourself and farm that said area.
Nice. Yeah, I think definitely, building a network of people is never going to be a bad thing. And, trusted people you can bounce questions off is always going to come back and help you. And then you find out that you're the one answering questions. So,
yeah, full circle, right?
Right. So I think you've touched upon this already in a way, but what are some of the ways that you've used, to techniques to build and maintain strong relationships with clients?
Follow up.
Yeah.
It's follow up. It's not very complicated in that sense. Whether it's residential or commercial, real estate is always going to be a relationship industry. And I hope that whether it's, Zillow or AI and all these other things that are theoretically trying to outsource real estate, but at the end of the day, it still is a relationship business. It still is, guiding your clients, whether it's investment or owner user, or for residential, helping a newly wedded couple, start their family, having that expertise and being that beacon of light, that guidance in that sense. Just understanding that will always be a big part of real estate, and just remembering little things in that sense. I mean, this can be very small, but a happy birthday or Christmas, or just maybe the anniversary of when you sold said property. There are many different ways to touch a client, and more so than anything, that the highest form of passing it forward from the client is a referral, meaning that I trust
Right.
you so much, I will put my good friends with you because I trust that you will do a good job as well.
Love a good referral.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's the cherry on top.
That's the highest compliment for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that you kind of touched upon this too. I mean, one of the other ways is, like, so you're seeing something shift. You talked about that planning that you're doing with those clients and, making sure, hey, are you still on that plan? Because the way I'm seeing things, it might be start to take some action on that plan if you aren't already.
That's right. Is it a short-term plan? Is it a 5-year plan? Is it a 10-year plan? Some of these commercial deals, they know the market's bad. It's okay. They're just hanging on to it until things get better. Other people, yeah, they need to have an exit strategy and cash out and shift to the next thing. But that's okay. Everyone's different.
Yeah, and plans, for people definitely change. I know that I've abruptly changed some of mine. Like children, things like that can sometimes do that to you.
Quick.
As far as how you've been able to develop yourself, do you believe the key to, or I guess I'd say, what would you say is the key to a strong personal brand in real estate? How did you develop your brand? Again, setting yourself apart from others in your area.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit more quirky than your typical commercial real estate agent. I'm comfortable in my skin, but trying to be, at least what the cool kids do now, being a little bit more social media savvy. Commercial real estate from a marketing perspective is always one step behind on residential, just in terms of, how you market a property or like just different things to put yourself out there. I always feel that commercial is one step behind, and maybe it's because they're an old boys club or they're more traditional, but eventually, things do shift to what the residential heads do. So I think for myself, being younger, it's to my advantage where, the older heads are not doing social media. They are not informing clients or, educating in that sense on a platform that they often overlook. That's actually one of my 2025 business plan goals is to, everyone's a little bit shy at times, but to put yourself out there more and hopefully, maybe get some more business, but it's something where I would like to see how that goes.
Well, it's an evolving world, and you have to evolve with it. And I think one of the things that happens is that people reach a point where they feel like they don't need to educate themselves anymore, on those new things, those new trends in some ways. And I think that, that's when you get old.
Right. And I think, starting off with commercial real estate too, like just getting out there and feeling uncomfortable, whether it's, an appointment, a cold call, or going on a podcast or putting yourself out there on social media. Like, there's so many different ways you can go about your business. And, being a trendsetter is certainly pretty cool too.
Yeah, it certainly isn't a bad thing. But putting yourself out there, I mean, there runs the risk sometimes of that not going as planned. Do you have any stories of when a client relationship didn't go as planned and how you managed your way through that situation?
Yeah, no, I've had a couple lessons in that sense, but well, if you really don't know your stuff, you shouldn't speak upon it. You'll get in trouble. Like, I know they say fake it till you make it, but especially for these bigger deals, when you say something where you're not too sure about, I won't say it's burned deals, but it hasn't been pretty in that sense, and it gives me a lesson too. Like, for one, I shouldn't have said that aloud, and second is, why did I not know that? Like, I should be better, right? It's one of those humbling lessons in that sense, and that's why I'm on a team, and that's why I work with other colleagues in the industry to know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and to partner up accordingly.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the good things is that, if you have somebody you can lean on, for those areas where you're maybe, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And with commercial real estate, there's so many different ways. I mean, there's hotels, there's apartments, there's a slew of commercial real estate, and I'm probably not going to be good at a hotel or a gas station, but I'm probably going to be good at apartments, and you know what, that's okay.
Right. Yeah. I think as they say, the riches are in the niches, and you try to do everything, you're not going to do anything well.
Yeah. I mean, like I said early on, I'll try, but sometimes I'm like, I'm a little out of my league, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right. Well, let's move from some of the humbling moments to, something that, maybe it's maybe a little boastful, something that has been maybe your proudest moment that's happened in real estate.
I mean, just on a side note, I mentioned ARIA, Asian Real Estate Association of America. I mean, that was something. It's unpaid. It's a nonprofit, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
in terms of leadership skills and just intrinsically getting better as a person, I joined ARIA in the Greater East Bay chapter pretty close to when I started real estate, and I started with that organization. Obviously for business, for networking, just
Right.
like right. But then my broker told me to get involved with ARIA, but not just attend, but make an impact, and that's how you're going to have a more fulfilling experience with an organization. So I did join the board. And then fast forward, like it was crazy, but I became president in 2019 for the board, which is awesome, being so young and holding the board down, let alone my own business, was quite a challenge. But 2019 also rolled over into COVID, which
Right.
no one saw coming. And the funny thing about that was this isn't all real estate related, but I'm very proud of it in the sense where I was president for 2 years in 2020 and 2021. And while we couldn't do a lot of things that you typically can do for a non-pandemic sort of year, but we did fundraise and we did give back to the community, at a time of need where hospitals needed more masks. We fundraised, over $15,000 and dispersed that to several hospitals throughout the Bay Area. And then we were able to get some recognition. ARIA is a national organization. And for one of those years, I mean, we got chapter of the year. And I was probably one of the younger presidents. I think I still am now that I think about it. But, one of the younger presidents to lead a chapter when no one really knew what to do. And I, even for my own business, just how I talk and how I approach clients, like all that whole experience was very empowering for me. And just to lead an organization made me better for it. And you fast forward to 2021, when there were a lot of hate crimes in the Bay Area, especially in the Asian community. I actually spoke up on behalf of ARIA in Oakland, Chinatown, and talked about some of the injustices that were going on and called it out. And I mean, I came with the intent to get business for real estate, but with the pandemic and all these other things that happened, next thing you know, I'm at a rally and definitely outside of my comfort zone.
Right.
Definitely outside of my comfort zone. But when I take a step back and reflect on what I did, what I accomplished, and from a leadership perspective, how much I grew, that is invaluable, and that's something that I'm very proud of.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said about helping other people. It's one of those things that it is so rewarding in a different way than financial can be, and there's so many ways to do that, right? You could be the person who brings, a can to a food drive of food when you're down on your luck, but you can be a person who stands up in front of other people being very uncomfortable, saying these things or, fundraising for the hospital. I mean, those, and the cool thing is that you did so many of those in such a short period of time. That's really, pat yourself on the back if you haven't already, because that's pretty awesome.
Right. And that's the thing too. I mean, obviously we have real estate and then there's basketball and all that, but there's other things too. I like to give back whenever I can. And that's one of the things that I do. So
yeah. I always say that if you're feeling down, give something to somebody who needs it, man. You will immediately feel a heck of a lot better. And I just wanted to say the ARIA, as you've been calling it, AREAA. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if people want to check that out, see if there's a chapter near them, I think that would be pretty cool for a lot of people and might again lead to some of those kind of networking and growth moments that people could be looking for.
That's right. No, national organization, different chapters, and I just so happen to be in the Bay Area, but I'd say collectively, like we're family. It's a very solid organization.
Nice. What do you see kind of going forward for you? I mean, you've made all of these accomplishments already. I mean, you've been the president of this chapter. You've been in this business now for 9 years. Over the next 5 to 10 years, what are some goals, some dreams that you are, kind of working toward putting together for yourself?
I mean, straight up, doing more and bigger deals. That's something that everyone wants. But Right now, I'm currently on the team, but maybe in the next 5-10 years, do my own thing.
Yeah.
just to be
So
honest,
would
but
you want to build like your own team, or would you want to be, completely independent, or kind of TBD?
let's do TBD for now. I like the aspect of a team. I think through my experience with Aria and the leadership, like that has certainly done well for me in that sense. But right now we're in a tougher market, and maybe I'm just being a little scared. But to make that jump, that would be something to keep in mind down the road. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Hey, and yeah, dreams, kind of shift. It's cool to think of, doing these things on your, more on your own. And I think everybody likes being surrounded by a group in some way or another, that are helping you. And um, so that's pretty cool. I'd love to see where you end up going, with this in 5 to 10 years. So
Yeah, I mean, life is funny that way. Like going when I was 27 in LA, then going into commercial real estate, and then being with Aria and speaking on the podium, and life takes you in a bunch of different places.
yeah, unexpected and usually in some good ways. And
Yeah.
what's your legacy that you want to leave the real estate world with? I mean, you often don't get, I think, statues, but what's your, I guess, the profession better for you having been in it?
I'd say right now it's happening already, where it's the change of hands between some of the older commercial real estate guys that have been set in their ways, or maybe not as forthcoming for sharing deals and whatnot. And then there's the new guys in town that are, I won't say changing practices within commercial real estate, but opening the business to the table in that sense. And I think it is happening with the change of guard. There's a lot more buyers that are getting into commercial real estate. And I'm just saying this for Old Boys Club. It used to be kind of narrow and closed on who does these deals before. And that's changing, and I'm going to be a part of that. So
yeah, breaking down silos is really good, whether they're informational or they're just kind of like these towers that people have built for themselves. Sometimes knocking those down, leveling them for people who are coming in can be a wonderful, wonderful thing. So thank you for your part in that.
Let's go.
All right. Well, let's, get away from that. I was, kind of in depth looking at the future, but, looking across all of the properties that you've worked with, what are some of the most interesting or unusual ones that you've ever worked with, either building or I guess, client or some combination?
I mean, that 35 unit multifamily I mentioned before, that was in Stockton. It wasn't in the best part of town. And, I had to get their cooperation for inspections and whatnot, and other weird things where I don't necessarily feel safe. There's that. I've done some deals in the Tenderloin in San Francisco. Commercial real estate isn't always as pretty as like the luxury homes you see for residential people. Let's just say that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I've done some mixed use deals where the whole thing should honestly just get demolished because like it's in terrible shape, and I don't know if it's safe. You see a slew of those things that get done, and it comes with the territory.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
If you weren't in this world, like you've probably done some different things before you got into real estate. But if it wasn't for real estate, what do you see yourself doing? If all of a sudden tomorrow you're just like, you know what, I'm done. What would you shift to? What would you pivot to?
Well, I mean, I know we're on this podcast. I'm very much into sports. I do my own. It's like a personal, my personal project. But I do a sports podcast called Just the West. My name's Justin, just covering the NFC West. So I'd probably start with something with sports. I'm a very passionate San Francisco 49ers fan, Warriors fan, Giants fan, but football would be number one for me. So in regards to something that I truly like outside of real estate, it would probably be something in the sports mantra of where I plug, whether it's marketing or sales. I don't know, but I'm super competitive, and that's something that I would look into.
All right. We get that you're competitive. Got the sports. All right. What is something that people maybe don't know about you, but probably should?
Going back to Aria, Asian real estate and whatnot. I mean, I have a very unique story where I'm fifth generation Chinese. My family actually came here in the 1880s. San Francisco, they were around for 50 something years, and they couldn't buy property because they weren't allowed to. The Wong laundry thing that they do always hear, that did happen. It's a real thing. And, I'd say that early on, growing up, I didn't know kind of, I'm not white enough. I'm not Asian enough. I'm unique in that sense. My parents had a very American childhood. And so, my family's been around, and we have a lot of history in the United States, in the Bay Area. And so, real estate has been done very well for my family, and it will continue to be a big part.
Nice. Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely quite a few generations back. I mean, I know some people who have far fewer generations in this land. So that's pretty cool to know that you've been around. Your family's been around, and in that area too, for that long. So
yeah, no, for sure.
Now, this is one of those things that's just kind of more for fun, and it's one of the ways that we like to kind of conclude every episode of the Inner Circle podcast with. It's to ask you the question as we work toward the end. If you could buy and live in any place in the world, any property in the world, no limitations on, price, location, size, style, etc., where would it be and why? Why would that appeal to you?
This doesn't really, in terms of like pragmatically, but I'm a kid at heart. The idea of living in Japan would be super cool. Like I love the food. I love the culture. I'm very much into anime and all that, but I know that real estate is a little bit limited. It might be smaller. So, obviously I try to get a better place in Japan, but that would be something that would be pretty cool. And I love the culture. I love how they have manners. They, their respect to one another, the food. That would be something that would be pretty cool for me.
Yeah, I think the layers of craftsmanship alone, where they think you're a beginner at something until you've been doing it for 20 years, is very unique, to us Americans.
Yeah, no, it's I marvel at it for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look at something else here. I guess what I would want to know is, are there any other kind of funny stories that you've had that you'd love to share with people here? Whether it's something that happened while you were showing a property, or while you were doing that final tour, final walkthrough with a client. Is there something weird that's happened in your experiences?
I won't say it was weird. It was kind of scary. I showed a property, and there was a squatter. There was someone that was not welcome to the place, and it's like I won't say it's like a robbery, but instantly my nerves just jumped up, and
oh yeah,
and then I told the client get back and close, and I had to call the listing agent, and they called the cops and whatnot. That was in the Bay Area. That's in Oakland.
Yeah. You never know how those situations are going to go. So yeah, getting the client out of there, I think that's the right.
Yeah,
that's the right thing. So,
and mind you, when you show properties, you do put yourself in, depending on the neighborhood, but not in the best part of town. You got to be very wary. You got to be very street smart. Yeah, it's a thing for sure.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand that. Yeah, you got. It's good to know the lay of the land. It's good to have somebody local, like yourself, who understands, the street smarts that are required for that. All right. Well, that's basically as far as what I have. That's everything I got. But obviously, people who are listening to this are going to want to know, who you are, how they can connect with you. Maybe they're also interested in, some of the teams that you mentioned. Maybe they're interested in your pickup basketball games. How can they reach you? Where can people find you? Or, you got some clients out there who want to work with you as well.
If you want to go for social stuff, it's pretty easy. Instagram at _J_Wong. Twitter at the same thing, _J_Wong. Also, my blog is on Spotify. It's Just the West, an NFC West podcast. Yeah, I think one of the things too is I'm open to social media. I'm trying to be better. So, like I said, one of my goals for 25 is to put more real estate intensive content out there. So you might see me on, who knows, you might see me on TikTok. I don't know. I still got to figure that out.
All right. Well, hey, you know what? We'll tag you. We'll get things started on getting you out there in social media. We'll tag you in this podcast when it goes out, so that people can also do that, and you can share us with your network, so people maybe who haven't seen this side of you can see a little bit more of that.
Excellent. I appreciate your time. This was awesome.
Definitely. Thank you very much for joining us. And I'm just going to wrap this up, Justin, because that concludes this episode of the Inner Circle podcast. And I hope that you, Justin, and I hope that everybody listening found some enlightening things here, and sure you have some great takeaways now on how to take a real estate career to the next level. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and Instagram at America's Inner Circle. And again, thank you very much, Justin, for joining us, and we'll see everybody next time.